Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the 2025 Homeschool Family Conference. And my name is Elliott. I'm the creator and founder of HomeschoolingTorah.com, but I'm not the one that you're here for today. This afternoon and every afternoon during the conference, we are going to be chatting with other moms who have lots of experience. And I have my little sticky tab here that is what I've been writing on for a couple months. It says, I used this when I texted these moms and asked them to come on. I said, "Dear Mom, I'd love to hear how you homeschooled and mentored your children and all the different tactics and methods you have used. And I would love to have you encourage other moms that they can do it." So today we have Amy Guenther from Torah Sisters, and you can find her at TorahSisters.com. Hi, Amy. And I'm going to do the same for Rachel real quick. We're going to also talk to Rachel LeClaire, and her husband is an evangelist and runs outside the camp. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But anyway, I'm going to let Rachel have a second. And we're going to start with Amy and put her in the chair first. And everybody out there, if you have questions that you would like to ask these moms, put them in the chat. And then at the end, we'll take the time to answer them. So just feel free to start sending those in. So Amy, you are you're a homeschool mom. You have 3 children, but you run Torah Sisters magazine. And that is what most people know you through. You have a retreat that we go to every year here in Michigan, and it's wonderful. But and you do so many other things. You have a community, Torah Sisters community, that is really, really awesome. I love the prayer requests in the Bible time is my favorite part of that. It's all good. And so many other things. I mean, I have a cup full of stickers. I have postcards in my house. There's just t-shirts in my closet. There are just so many things that you've done over the years. But I also know you really well because we happen to live in the same town in Michigan. And so we have been friends for a very long time. In fact, when you first came to Torah, I think I sold you some homeschooling books. I think that might be the first way we met each other. But anyway, it's a pleasure to have you here. And Amy, the reason I brought you in is so that you could encourage other moms, because you have been homeschooling your children and now they are almost all grown up. You have 2 in high school and 1 that's graduated, and I get to see their life and I see that they're the real thing and that they're well educated. And I know you've done a fantastic job. So Amy, that's why I asked you to come, not because you run a magazine, but just because you're a mom and you have done a good job. So Amy, I was wondering today, well, can you start? Just tell them some of the unique challenges maybe that you've had to face in homeschooling. And then I want to just talk about how you did it. What are some of the ways you did it?
All right, that was all really nice, Anne. Thank you. Yeah, first and foremost, I'm a homeschooling mama. I'm not married, so a homeschooling mom is my life. My kids come first, and my unique challenge is that like I said, I'm single, and I'm not the only one. A lot of you ladies out there are homeschooling single, and a lot of dads are homeschooling single, and it does create an extra element of challenge. And I think prayer definitely covered that, and the Father's been faithful. And first of all, don't think, oh, I'm in a weird situation, therefore it's impossible, and you throw your hands up and give up. Do not give up. If you think is what the Father wants you to do, keep asking questions. How can I do this? Where can I get funding? Where can I think creatively outside the box? I would ask Anne, help me make a schedule, and she would spreadsheet out a daily schedule for me. So the Father surrounds you with people and tools and resources, and so ask questions, but don't give up easily. Well, but what else was it, Anne?
Well, okay, so let's talk about Torah. Has it always been easy to teach your children Torah?
Well, in the very beginning, you want the way back beginning of
it's
my
up
Torah?
to you.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to share.
So this is part of my story is when I first came to Torah, I was married to a Christian man who thought this Torah stuff was nuts. And so he told me I was not allowed to teach it to the children because he thought it was a dangerous road to go down. And so I didn't teach it to the children. But I did then much more heavily instill in them that the scriptures are the authority. Every Christian believes that, but I taught it to them very heavily while they were still, in the Christian church and things, and to have a heart really bent towards obedience. And then a while later, I wasn't married anymore and I could teach my kids Torah. And, I'm not I already kind of look back with regrets. Like, I wish I'd done this better, and I wish I'd been stronger in this. And yet my kids are great kids, Anne. And thank you for saying that. So first of all, moms, don't beat yourself up, because we're all in that spot. We're all in that spot of wanting to beat ourselves up. But one thing I did do really well is, we just read the Bible and talk about it. And any mom can just find a chronological plan. I like a chronological plan, and just read it and talk about it. And you don't have to use fancy tools. You don't have to use fancy books. You can just read it and talk about it. And then after, you don't have to do it in a year. Like, don't feel pressure. There's no Bible verse that says thou shalt read the whole 66 books in 1 year. Like, we put pressure on ourselves that's just invented. But so we go slow, but we get through it. And then when you start again, everybody's a little bit older, including me. I'm a little older, a little more mature. I've been through the portions longer with our congregations, and you're going to see new things, and the kids are going to see more things. So that's the number one thing that we do. And I'm not perfect at it. We don't even do it every day, but then some days are like really long and some days are really short, and we have skips days. But in the end, they know the scripture is the authority, and they know that the Father wants happy heart obedience. We taught them that from when they're small. That goes through their whole life. Even when they have jobs someday, they have to know that even if you think your boss is a bozo and you hate your work and stuff, you still have to obey an authority with a happy heart, a happy countenance on the outside. And you can start teaching them that when they're like 1 and 2. So sorry, sidetrack. But
no, I wanted that sidetrack. That was on my paper.
And so that stuff just carries over. Like, that's so Torah. It's so Torah. And adults struggle with happy heart outside obedience too, when the inside is grumbling and fearful and not trusting or whatever. We can still, and sometimes you change your countenance on the outside and it starts to change your inside too. But but do also try to capture your kids' heart. So you don't just want outward obedience from your kids, and that takes time. Another thing we do is I point out carefully. You have to be careful with this one, but I point out other sin that I see around us. Like, even when they were very small and you're at the store and you see another child in a shopping cart throwing a temper tantrum and disrespecting their mommy, I would say to my kids, 'cause they can't not see it. It's so loud. And as we stroll away, I would say, that is not how Guenthers act. That's not how Christians behave. That child is whatever. You point it out. You don't just let that sin that they saw head on just sit and stew and like, oh, this is how we act, because then that's their culture, right? We're all fighting culture. And so kids see other littles sinning. You have to, debrief afterwards. You have to say, put it back into the whole Bible context of that behavior was wrong, and here's why. And if you want verses to back it up, I'm going to give you all a really easy trick. Sometimes I'm also not good at what is a verse that can back up what I'm saying? Who's your friend is Google, or just an AI tool just for searching. Some of the AI just for searching, just searching. So Google knows the Bible really well. And I can't tell you how many times I look up, Bible verses about and so then you can have a scripture to back up what you're saying for your kids. On the flip side, I also point out good behavior to my children. And then that changes as they grow older. It starts with look at how that child obeyed his mommy and said, yes, mom, but then now that they're big and they're starting maybe to want relationships and marriages one day, I have been doing this for years. Am I talking too much, too fast?
No, keep it up.
I point out healthy marriages, you go to Sukkot, and because I'm a single mom, right? So I want my kids to see healthy marriages. So when I point out a husband and a wife treating each other well, I'm like, look at that. That's so great what they did. And so on and so on. I mean, my kids know about sin. I want to be the first one to tell them about sin too. There's a marijuana shop down the road, and sometimes that's sinful. And I want my kids, I remember teaching my kids about marijuana. I can't believe I'm telling you all this. They were small. They were 7 years old, but it's kind of just out there. It's everywhere. And I mean, not in our exact life, but I just want them to know about the world. And now there's a pot shop down the road, but I want them to hear about things first from me, not from, even a PG cartoon movie can have really worldly themes and principles in it. I want them to know about that stuff from me first. We never watch, when they were we would never watch a movie all the way through without me pausing it and debriefing. It was always very annoying, but you can't I don't let that stuff sit. Those little kid movies, and we watch them, but again, I filter, boys and girls really young are having boyfriends and girlfriends and playing kissy face, and we don't like that. And lots of teenage rebellion in those kinds of shows, like, oh, this is just what a teenager do. This is just what they do. They're just going to go to their room, cold shoulder their parents, and slam the door. That's just what they do. And the parents just go, huh? And I would stop the movie and go, no, that's not that's rebelliousness. And then, show them the scriptures. But what else?
Amen.
Those are just some things we do.
I have a bee in my bonnet. I want to talk to you about this.
Go.
One of the things I respect about you, Amy, is that your children are beyond good character, and they have excellent character. I'd hire them for any job, but they also have good academics. And I just wanted to pull this up. Now, Amy, I know this. You've been my friend for a long time. You don't use Homeschooling Torah. Again, it was a very Torah observant curriculum, and you were trying to show honor to your ex-husband and say, okay, I'll get along with him, and we can find something that we can compromise on. And yet your children are extremely well educated, and I know you value academics. So I have written down here, talk to her about the importance of good academics. A lot of homeschooling moms have fallen prey to the myth that academics aren't important and we don't need our children to be well educated. And I know you don't agree with that. So I'm like, I want to talk to her about that one.
Okay. Yeah, I have thoughts. And my first thought is, there's a giant echo. Is it okay, Kirsten?
We're good.
Okay. My first thought is, if I say I don't agree with unschooling, first of all, I have compassion and respect for mamas who unschool. So we can still be friends. And there's a balance, right? Like, I can't just make my kids sit and do papers and read books all day. They're going to be bored and not well-rounded and hate learning. So I appreciate the balance that unschoolers bring to the discussion. And I do think some of it might stem from just mamas being busy and overwhelmed. And so I'm not going to lie, like, I would love to unschool. I think it creates a much more free atmosphere in the home and a lot more flexibility in life, probably much more affordable. But I don't do that. Now, could I school academically better and harder? Oh yeah. But my kids are educated. I do value an education. And for me, it's a balance, all right. So here's what I think. I want each of my kids to be challenged to their potential. But I also don't over challenge. Could my kids do all the college prep classes that are available to them? Yes. John and I don't push them that hard. John is their dad. We're okay with them doing, a traditional college prep track, and so that if they want to go to college, they can. Two of my kids have done pre-calculus, physics, chemistry. And another one is very mechanical minded. He's going to do apprenticeships and stuff like that. So each kid is different, but I want them challenged to their potential. I want them to be very well versed in the maths and the sciences. That just shows up everywhere in life. Now, does that mean every kid has to go through pre-calc? Absolutely not. I don't think so, but I think they need to. And it starts when they're young. Like, I remember teaching them their multiplication facts. Like, that is potty training and multiplication facts, right, mamas?
Yeah, I got to interrupt
hard.
you. I remember the first time I went to your house, Amy, and you had a little school table set up in a room and little chairs around. It was really cute. I loved it. We were living on a bus at that time, and of course we didn't have room for a schoolroom like that. But I went in yours, and I'm like, ooh, this is fun. This is fun. And she had the flashcards there, and I know she did them with her children. Like, I witnessed it with my own eyes. And like, your children knew their math facts because you had worked with them. You had been there for them.
Mm-hmm. And it's a ton of work. Like, it's not, there's an echo, but it's gone. Okay. It's not, it just takes time. It just takes, as Anne calls it, button chair time. But that serves them well, because if they don't learn that, the rest of math, the rest of their life is going to be so hard. And I would rather postpone the next math level until they master that. And then, I think the sciences are important. I think the math is important. We do the core. And again, other families school much better than me, and I could have them probably much better prepped for college. But I know that I can give them a good, hearty, well-rounded transcript. And if they want to go to college, they can. And some kids change their minds over time. They start with one track, and 2 years later, when they're 20 or 22, I change my mind. So I want them to have options. I want them to be able to be really wonderful communicators. And I think that often takes, not always, but often takes a solid education. They need to be able to write. They need to be able to have some decent spelling, not perfect spelling, but decent. And nowadays, it's a lot of knowing tools available for you. I like to teach my kids how to use technology to their advantage, making them read in the beginning, making them read. Now, like I can't find enough books to keep them busy reading, has served them very, very well. And that's a great unschooling technique. I think a lot of unschoolers read like crazy, but they need to do the academics, I think. So that was our track. I value that. It will serve them well to be able to write books about the Word of God. I mean, we're living in, all right, I'm going to go here, Anne. We're living in such a crazy time, sisters, that we see Torah. Most of us came out of mainstream Christianity, and this is all new. Like if this is what we think it is, where it's like we're nearing Yeshua's return and he's waking us up to Torah after 2,000 years of dry bones, that's powerful. And the reason I found it is because other educated people made websites and wrote papers and wrote books and then recorded well done, polished videos that I could watch and learn from. And I want my kids to be able to be a part of this that the Father is doing. Not that they have to be a preacher or do apologetics, but at least be able to communicate with people around them. And a good education, a good education. There's different levels. It's a spectrum. They don't have to, end up with doctorates and stuff. Like I said, they're not doing the college classes. They're not doing the AP classes. But they can communicate and they can do math and they can do science, and they'll be able to provide, my sons will be able to provide for their families one day so that they have time to also be a dad. They don't have to work 3 jobs. They can work hopefully 1 job and still be a great daddy, and be generous because they have enough income to be generous and to help their local. I mean, the ripple effects are huge. So that's some of my thoughts.
Awesome. So you run a business. You work really hard running a business. I have seen that. We've even gotten together and brainstormed business ideas. But one of the things I enjoy watching is how you work with your children in the business or in some of your, I'll say, hobbies or ministries that you do in the local area. Can you talk a little bit about beyond academics? What are some things that you can do with children and I'm saying children, yours are in their upper teens, but what are some things that you can do to prepare them for life beyond schoolwork?
Okay, you know what though, Anne, I'm going to go back to the other thing.
Okay.
There are reasons that as a single mama, I can still give my kids a good education. Again, not like high level excellent, but good is because I use a lot of online tools. They do a lot of independent learning. I can't sit face to face with them and teach them all the time. And since they were small, they've been doing a lot of independent learning, and it costs a bit of money, which is why I work so hard. But it's going to be hard no matter what. So I will say this, hslda.org gives away grants for single moms, and it's probably single dads too. So I have gotten a grant from them before to help afford, because they know that single parents especially are going to need to buy the more expensive online curricula. And may God bless the people who donated money to them, because I benefited from that. So if you don't have to have a high level education to educate your kids to a level of good. There's so many online tools, and you're going to have a resource pack, right? I told you the ones I use, and we've tweaked it over the years, but now they're doing high school almost completely independently. So yes, I do work a lot. My kids help me with Torah Sisters. They schlep stuff to the post office and they help me pack stuff, and they're constantly moving 40-pound boxes of magazines. They help a lot, and they go back and forth from their dad, so they're not even here all the time. But when they're here, they're hard workers. Another thing we do is we've been volunteering at my local food bank here in our little town for many years, and now I run the food bank, and they work hard there. And so that's also a resume builder. When they get their first jobs, they can say, I've been volunteering in a food bank for like 8 years. But it's not a huge commitment of time. And so it's very doable for us. And it's something that we can do together. When they were little, they would help unpack cans, like match what the can says and put it at the right spot on the shelf. And now, I can send them to a store to pick up, $500 or $1,000 worth of food and put it all away independently. So the teenagers are awesome. You always told me that teenagers are awesome.
They are.
Right. They're very capable. And I think, if anything, I underestimate them. And I have people around me who are like, your kids can probably do that just fine. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yes, but you've had your kids, you've had them do hard things. You've had them do things that are difficult. And a lot of times we shelter our kids and think, well, it's too hard. I should probably do that for them. And you do not treat your children like that. And yet they're always smiling. When I see them working and like loading up for Torah Sisters Retreat, that's a huge job. Your garage is full of stuff, and you have to rent a trailer or a truck to get everything there. And there are your children just smiling. I'm sure they don't always smile, but I don't see that part. So yeah.
Yep, they work hard. They work hard, and they know like this is, it's easy to think, well, this is mom's ministry, and that's that thing and that thing. But man, if you can get the whole family joining up in something, that's really awesome, because then it's less driving too, and like takes less time. Your efforts are multiplied if you join in together.
Yes, exactly. You're all working towards one vision and one purpose, and it's just so much more joyful. So, okay. I do have a resource package that I'm going to be sending everybody, and they don't know this. I haven't really announced it to them, but after each one of these Mom Wisdom sessions, I'm going to put together a list of resources that you have used and found valuable. And so that's going to be coming in everyone's email later this afternoon. After this session, we'll put it together. I just wanted to wait and see what all they mentioned, make sure we included everything. Amy, when things get hard for you, I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, but when things get hard for you and it's maybe 3 a.m. and, you're concerned, maybe money's tight or just problems, what do you do to help you get through that situation? Do you have any? I know I did not prep you for that question.
Oh, I'm not good at that, Anne. I don't sleep well. Money problems is a good one to talk about. To homeschool, whether you're, and I talk about single parenting is so hard, but homeschooling is hard if you're happily, awesomely married and have a lot of money. Like, it's just I always tell people homeschooling is the hardest, best thing you'll ever do. No matter your circumstance, you're going to give something up. And for most homeschooling families, they're giving up a loss of income because the mama could work more. And I've always told my kids, especially since being single, that I would rather live in the worst part of town in the worst house, but be able to homeschool and be together. I have read articles from grown adults looking back on their childhood about being like poor or broke, and they don't really remember it. They didn't really notice that they were poor. And I really let those sink in, that money, and the Bible teaches us this, the money is not the most important thing to our children. They need parents who are with them a lot, parents who are around them a lot. Again, not like freaky, weird helicopter parenting, like we said, challenging, but I want to be the main influence on my children, me and their dad. So we really, really like to be together. And so, yeah, when I get stressed and I recount his faithfulness. When you recount his faithfulness, how can you then worry about the future? So I start remembering, and I wish I had journaled. People early on, like, because I was divorced, told me, Amy, because I would say, this amazing thing happened, and look at this, everything just worked out, I mean, I ended up divorced, but everything just all these things kept working out, and I kept getting work, and I would get another work at home job and another work at home job. And I was like, I've always been home, Anne, you know this. For 10 years, the Father has provided work that I can be home. And so when I get fearful, the best thing I can do is to recount his faithfulness. In the Old Testament, and you're better at Old Testament than me, but when the Father did something amazing, they would set up a memorial stone, right? Not really
Yes.
an altar, but a memorial stone, a marker to say and they named it something special so that they never forgot. And so I wish I had used a journal as a memorial stone, and written down all the things, but I remember them, and I will go back and recount all the times where he provided out of nowhere, or things just worked out, or somebody did something that I never thought they would do, but it was exactly what we needed, or something. And even having great kids is such an answer to prayer. Like, it's not all me. They're just wonderful young people. So that's the number one, which kind of goes along with gratitude. If you focus on gratitude, it calms your spirit, it calms your anxiety, but specifically recounting what he has done.
Amen. Wow. Yeah, we weren't going to talk about that one. I see in the comments someone said I needed that one, and I did too. So thank you, Amy. I'm going to actually make a note here in just a second to put maybe a quote like that in the resource packet and some verses for that. So thank you so much. So everyone, if you have questions you want to ask her, you can leave them in the comments, and I'm going to let Amy have a break, and I'm going to bring Rachel in because we want to hear from her too. But thank you, Amy, so much for sharing all of that. It goes along really well with what we talked about this morning with marriage, and then I bring on a single mom, and I did that on purpose. And I wanted everyone to see that it's all about how we walk with Yah, and not about our circumstances, and he can make everything really good. So thank you. Okay, so I will let her go and let her have a break, and we'll bring on Rachel. And Rachel, I am so excited you are here today. I want everyone to meet you. Rachel, you are a homeschooling mom and a wife and a full-time missionary. And you are only 30 years old. My word. She's been married for 12 years to Andrew LeClaire. She is together. They work together on this. They're the creator of the YouTube channel Outside the Camp. And I'll be putting a link in just a second to that in the chat. Together, they travel full-time in an RV all across the United States, and they have 3 wonderful children. I know them in person. Molly is 12, Elijah is 10, and Hannah is 6, and they are such sweethearts. They share the gospel, and they live out their faith on the road in a little RV, guys. Like, you'd think that they would get on each other's nerves after a while, but I know them in person, and they have a great marriage. And Rachel brings a unique perspective on homeschooling, family, and ministry. So welcome, Rachel. Besides the fact she used to work for us at Homeschooling Torah, so I actually know her in real life. And again, I try to choose moms who I know their walk and their fruit, and they live it out in everyday life. So I can't say enough good about this couple, Rachel and Andrew. We have been privileged to be with them for several Sukkots and to see them in their marriage. And just, I love watching them together. They are such an awesome couple. So now they've completely built you up and made you feel very awkward, Rachel. Welcome. So
thank you.
You are the youngest mom I'm bringing on this week. Everyone else is like old like me. And so, but I wanted to bring you on because your children, I mean, if Molly is 12, I have known you guys, oh goodness sakes, half of her life, I would say. And I've seen you, parent and homeschool from the beginning. And I have just been impressed with how you did it. And I wanted people to hear about it, besides the fact that you have unique things like living in an RV and all of that. But if you could just go back in time, Rachel, to when you first started being a mom or even married, or the first time you started homeschooling, what advice would you look back and give to that earlier self and say, man, I wish I would do this? Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, where do I start? I have lots. I'd say definitely to just believe in yourself more, because I think that the world has a way of making you feel inadequate. And if you're not a teacher, like if you don't have a teaching degree, you can't do it. But it's like, why does that make sense? If I was in public school my whole life, why shouldn't I be able to teach my kids? Why should I trust the public school system to teach my kids if I can't teach my own kids? That seems like you guys may have failed me, but it is true. It is a lot easier than I had originally thought. And I think for me, the biggest one for us, the biggest struggle was obviously the beginning. Molly was pretty behind. It was so I have a sister that is younger than my daughter, and she's like maybe 6 months younger, and she goes to public school. And there was a time when, I mean, they were maybe in first grade, second, maybe. It's when they know how to read like basic words. And my sister was reading, and she was reading really well. And then it was Molly's time to read, and she was really struggling to read. And I was like, man, this is really showing how I'm just lacking here in homeschooling. And this was like right at the beginning when I didn't really know what curriculum to use. I've had other people, say, use this one, use that one. We started off with 5 in a row, which is where you read a book 5 days in a row, and each day you go on a different subject. And, the kids liked the stories and whatnot, but it just wasn't helping them learn to read. So we did sing, spell, read, and write with Molly and Eli. And I think that really helped them to read, and they progressed really fast after that. But they didn't really like it a ton, but it did help. But I think if your kids like the curriculum, then that's gonna make your life a lot easier, and to not try to go by the standards of the school system. You can progress them as fast or as slow as you want. We've had to put Eli through, I think it was 4th grade math 2 times, almost a 3rd time. He was not happy with it. He's like 1.5 years older than his sister, and now they're in the same grade, and now he's like really good at math. And I just wanted him to understand like patience, and you grow at your own rate. And so now they're both going into 6th grade. So I have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old going into 6th grade. And, he loves saying that he's in the same grade as his sister, but it took a lot of work, like overtime work, to where he's progressing through 4th grade math at like a really fast level because he already went through it, review. But yeah, I guess I would say to go at your own pace. Don't go based on what the school system says, and to keep pushing forward. Like, just don't give up. There was actually a few times where at the beginning of my parenthood, I was like, Andrew and I were like, we're definitely homeschooling. Like, before I even got pregnant, we were like, I'm homeschooling. Like, that's just going to be the case. And so there are times, specifically with Eli, where he would like, I love him, but he would really get bothered by having to, when he didn't understand something, he would melt down. And so then I'd have to deal with the meltdown. And, so it was very difficult. And there was a couple times where I'm like, should I just send them to private school? Like, public school is not really an option, but can I do private school? But I'm really glad I pushed through, because if you can just be patient with them, it's a really good life lesson. Sometimes we do that with the father, and like, we just refuse to want to learn because it's really difficult to learn and have to relearn. But it's worth it in the end. The growth is.
Yeah, where do moms go to have their meltdown, right? After a hard day. So, but it's true. Right.
The bathroom.
Right. The father does take us through the same lessons. Like, think of them in the wilderness. They went round and round and round and round until they finally got it down. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But that is so true. So yeah, feeling like quitting. I used to feel like quitting a lot because we lived really close to an elementary school. If it's kind of been funny, almost a joke, that we moved a lot, and the father would put us by an elementary school every single time. Like, I could see what they were doing, and I just wanted to quit. I wanted to just ship my kids over there because I felt like a complete failure. My kids weren't learning as fast as someone else, or whatever, or I just felt like it was too hard, or maybe they had learned something in college at their teacher certification classes, that I hadn't learned. And you have to get back in the word and be reminded that now these children are my responsibility and I have to do it. But I can really relate to that. So yeah, don't quit. Um,
Yeah.
so let's talk about this. Hopefully, isn't putting you on the spot too much, but let's talk about your amazing marriage. And I know, I'm sure you have your moments where it's not amazing and they're all flashing before your eyes right now. But from the outside looking in, I can say that you two are a strong marriage and you're on the same team. You work together towards the same goals. And I was just wondering, are there a couple tips that you could give, maybe some mom that's struggling in that area? What would you tell her to help strengthen a marriage, even when you're stuck in an RV all the time with someone else? That's got to be hard sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. I think we can all agree that it really does bring us closer together being in a small space because we do have our rooms to retreat to, but, like, we do prefer to be together. But I think a big one for us that we've pretty much done since the beginning, just because we enjoy being together. If you don't like being together, then you need to, like, work on enjoying each other, but every night we give the kids, I mean, ever since RVing, it's not as strict as it was, but, like, we try to give them, like, an 8, 9 o'clock bedtime so that Andrew and I can have special time together every single night. We'll play, like, Skip-Bo, maybe watch a show together that we both like, um, and it's like a date night every night. We talk about that a lot, like, it's just a date night every single night, and since we're in an RV, we don't have even anybody that we can give our kids to. So we've had date nights where, he'll go get like a bunch of appetizers from different restaurants and he'll bring it home and we'll, go in our room and play some chess and, have the dinner and then watch a movie. And it's like we don't have to leave the house. It's a lot cheaper than going to the movies. And we also have VidAngel, which is a really good resource. I think if you want to watch a movie, they'll filter out all the junk, if there's any nudity or profanity or blasphemy, anything like that, so we can watch like clean content. So we'll watch a movie. The movie theaters just don't have that, so it is actually a preference to do that. But if you can't, you just have to make it work and it's worth it. And then another one that we've been doing lately, we've done this now twice, is the Love Dare, and a movie that goes with it, I think, is called Courageous. And I don't know what you should do first. I think you should watch the movie first and then do the Love Dare, because then you can kind of look and be like, oh, this was that day and that's how they addressed it. And I think that's a really good resource too. Praying every night, that's a really hard habit to get into, but it builds walls around your marriage. And to put up fences, like, we have rules about contact. I think that's a big one, because being in ministry, I think you probably understand this. um, a lot of people feel comfortable reaching out when they maybe shouldn't, so we do group chats and stuff like that, so that we're on the defense instead of the offense. After something happens, now we have to fix it. We're never alone with the opposite gender together. If we're not together in a room, then we're not going to go ever in an area with the opposite gender. We were given that advice from my old pastor a long time ago, and I think that's very valuable. And actually, he was just going to interview a pastor the other week, and it was a girl, and she's like, well, I don't want to be on camera, but we can do an interview alone. And he's like, well, for a couple reasons, I'm not going to do that. Just for one, I don't stay in a room alone with a woman when my wife's not around, but also there's room for slander, and I don't feel comfortable with that. So, like, unfortunately he didn't get that interview, but she was also an LGBT pastor, so that was interesting.
Yeah.
She was very proud. Yeah. But yeah, I guess those are some things. I probably could come up with more, but those are the
Can we
things that
go
came
back
off
to
the
one
top
of
of my
them?
head.
You said that prayer is a really hard
Yeah.
one. Hard to get established, I think is how you worded it, maybe. Can you talk about that some more? Why do you think it's so hard? Or
I don't know. We have all this time for other things. It's just like the habit of getting into doing that before you let all of the other things distract you, you know? We still struggle with that today. We go through, like, times where we're doing it every day, and, I have a little one that still needs to be woken up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And so we'll take turns every night to do that. And so then we would say the person who prays is not the person who gets Hannah up to go to the bathroom. So we like take alternating shifts, which also, brings some accountability. So each of us have a responsibility every night. But also, I just think that it's good to connect in that way, but I don't know, it's just definitely hard. I think it's just the enemy. He really doesn't want us to be together.
That's what I'm betting.
In that way.
That's what I'm betting. And that's really cool. I'm so thankful you mentioned that one, because what's that song? When I fight on my knees with my, being in prayer is the way to fight the enemy. And sometimes we will think of going to some sister in the faith and praying with her, but to pray with our spouse, well, it hadn't even occurred to me. So yeah, I'm really glad you brought that one up. So, okay. Let's talk about school in an RV. I lived in a bus for a very short time, nothing compared to how long you've been in an RV. So, and I know there are other people that will be listening that either have an RV life, maybe a schoolie, or they live in a tiny house, or they travel like you do, but there are other moms who have a very small house. And so they might as well be in an RV. Maybe they just have a really small amount of space. And I know they are watching right now. So could you give us your best tips? Like, how do you make this work? And I think you use Homeschooling Torah. So how in the world do you make that work? Because with all the printing and everything, like, can you tell us how you do that?
Yeah, so ever since I started Homeschooling Torah, I got an EcoPrint printer, which I highly, highly recommend. I don't honestly know if I could do it without an EcoPrint. Basically, it's just like big old jugs of ink, and I have not had to change that ink. One time, I think one time I had to replace the black, and it was like $13, and you can do like 10,000 pages off $13. It's just, there's no other way I could have done it with a normal printer. It's ridiculous. So
is that the
that's number
Epson
one.
one? The
Get a
Epson?
good printer.
Okay, cool. We'll put a link to that in the resource.
The Eco Tank. Yeah. So that's definitely number one. If you don't so like we have a toy hauler, and I'll just put everything on the floor. Not everybody has the floor space that we have. I mean, for an RV, it's like, I don't know, 8 foot by 4 foot. That's a lot for an RV to have floor space. But if you have like a nice table, you can also do it like that. And since I have 3 kids, I'll do 2 kids at a time. They're in the same grade. But I'll print all of theirs off together, and I'll, separate it in piles, bind them, put them in binders. But if you don't have the space for that, you guys also sell the books. Actually, when I was in Hawaii with the family there, the Hamricks, shout out to the Hamricks, we miss you guys. We told them about Homeschooling Tour, and she ended up getting some of your books, and they're bound. And she's like, it's really not that much money for them. And so it was totally worth her time and effort to just buy the books and have them already bound. Probably more durable than the binders, because they don't tear out as easy. So I'd say if you're an RVer and you have the extra money, I would probably buy the books. I'm just like very frugal. So like I will do whatever it takes to save money. So, I mean, I think that's the best way. I guess maybe doing like, so a lot of our history can happen on the road, which is really nice. We go to a lot of national parks. 4th graders get free national park pass or equivalent, homeschool equivalent, get a free national park pass for the year. And so take advantage of that. And if you don't have a 4th grader, then, if you have national parks around you, or if you're an RVer, then definitely it's worth getting the national park pass. And just to go there, when we were in Florida, we went to the Castillo something. It was a fort. They got a lot of forts on the coast. So we got to learn about that. And then when we went to Texas, we got to learn about the Alamo, and it's way different. We learned a lot about it, but when you're at the Alamo, it's like, oh, everything clicks. Like we went to the Davy Crockett Museum in Tennessee. And then when we went to the Alamo, we were like, oh, Davy Crockett died in the Alamo. I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. I remember learning that at the Davy Crockett Museum. But when you're at the Alamo, it's like it all clicks, And so definitely like the experience, taking them out in nature, and like learn as you go throughout life. Because like if you live in America and you travel, that there's history everywhere, and a lot of them are really cheap to go do. So I think that's a really
Very
big
cool.
advantage.
Do your children always have, is it easy to get along when you're in a small space all the time? Or do you have maybe more fighting than the average family? What do you think about that?
Oh, I don't think that really the fighting changed much when we got an RV, but I think they go in periods of their life, just like growing. Um, I really don't think it has anything to do with the small space though, because they will fight when they're outside in like the big open area, I think. But they do all share a room, so that can be challenging sometimes. But I allow them to have their own space. So everybody has their own space they can retreat to. The way we have it set up, it's like their own rooms inside the rooms. So if they're in their room, you can't bother them. Like they need to have their own space. But we have done team building exercises. They'll write sorry notes to one another, or they'll share proximity close, for a while. They'll wash dishes together, so like those kind of things can really help build character and understand that they're a team and they're not, they shouldn't be butting heads, but that they need to get along and love one another. I tell them, if you don't love your brother, how can you love your enemy? Because even the Gentiles love their brother. So, it's just a good thing to remember. Of course, siblings fight, but, gotta love them.
Wow, that's really good. That's really good. Okay. That is, I think the only other thing I would ask you, because I'm almost to the end of my list of questions, and then we'll see what questions everyone else has for you guys. What do you think has been the biggest blessing of homeschooling? And, I know you've been in a house homeschooling and now you're in an RV, but beyond that, where your location is, what do you think has been your favorite part of homeschooling so far? And the thing that you're just so thankful that the Father allowed you to have?
Probably spiritual protection. I know that it can be like literally a war zone, like a spiritual war zone in the public school system or private school system. Even when they're hanging out with the friends they just made, it's like they come back and they're like, I mean, there was some time when we were at an RV park and these group of kids were pretty like just not good. And they were like, say OMG and I'll play with you or something like that. Go in this other person's site or I won't play with you. Those kind of things. And they would be like, no, and they would see like that's how public school could be, but like way worse because they can just come right back home and tell us. So we're there to protect them. And they're like at arm's length, which really helps. We can kind of control who they hang out with, which also really helps, especially with public school. You have no idea what their friends are like, what they're saying. So I'd say the spiritual protection for sure. And just I guess here's another one is like knowing that you were the one who taught your kids. That's pretty cool to like know that my kids know how to read and do math because their mom taught them. That's pretty cool. And actually I'm learning a lot. I'm going through the history curriculum with the kids right now. And I'm like, whoa, I had no idea I was from the descendant of Japheth, and we just did our DNA test and Andrew and I are both descendants of Japheth, so that's cool stuff. They're not going to learn that in public school. Like it's quality in a substance. I think that's important.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to bring Amy back on if that's okay with her. And that way, you know what? I don't even know if I need to be here, but I'll be here. Okay. Kirsten, my daughter, is also behind the scenes helping out. And let's see if anyone has any questions. She's going to help us out with that. And I'm going to be putting together a resource thing. Everybody give me at least 2 hours to get that out by email. Check your email. While we're waiting to get questions, I also wanted to remind everybody that we have a goodie bag this week. And this goodie bag is already available on the Homeschooling Torah conference site. So I'm going to put a link to that real quick. And there it is. It's in the chat right now. And you can go there and get lots of really cool things, but you have to be registered to get the resource that I'm going to be sending out from these ladies. So if you want to get that and you aren't registered yet, well, you've got about a 2-hour window to hurry up and go register. You can go to you can go to that goodie bag page and click on the schedule, and it'll have a place where you can register. But you definitely want to do that because the resources that are going out this week are so helpful. So Kirsten, are there any questions that we would like these ladies to answer? Okay, how much time do you spend on a school day doing school? Who wants to take that one first?
Rachel does.
Okay. Probably a lot less than you think. So a lot of times, I think Amy, you and I are similar in the way we school, a lot of independent learning. I like Homeschooling Torah because a lot of it is, solo work, although we do things like science and history is really the only ones that we do together. Everything else is pretty solo, and spelling is the three. But they will do their solo work every day. And then I think about once or twice a week, we will do like one subject for a whole week. So we'll do science. The whole day is science. And it doesn't take too long to get a whole week of science done. It's like maybe a couple hours. So I'd say probably a couple hours at most. And as they get older, it's probably going to be more than that. But they just got done with 5th grade. So that, it doesn't take too long. Preschool is like a half an hour or less.
That's good, Rachel. That's how I did it when my kids were small too. And now that my kids are bigger, it takes longer. It does. And we usually don't finish by summer. They usually don't get their summers off. So you could say, how long does it take in the year? It's almost year round. And then we take the feasts off, and we have flexibility to take lots of days off. But each day it takes them a few hours, sometimes several hours, sometimes math. I remember when my oldest was really starting to get into the hard math, like algebra 2 and things like that, he would be like, I've been sitting here for an hour. And I would say, that's normal, So the harder subjects will take them longer, and they're not used to it because when they were little, it would take 20 minutes, but they can do it, and they can take breaks. They can get up and stretch. My kids sometimes go through phases where they'll do school in their hammocks outside if the internet will reach, So even when they're big, I think they should mix with their environment because it is dull. School is not always fun. Sometimes it's just, again, butt and chair, do the work. And I taught them early on that if they did not try hard, I would make them do it again. Like with the math facts, you do that paper, but you can just tell when your kid's not trying hard. You can just tell. And I would make them start over. So they learn that it's just better to try hard the first time because then your whole work time is as small as short and as brief as it can be. But yeah, my kids are like, 11th, 12th grades, 10th grades. It takes them several hours. And not every subject, like let's say, in one of the things, like we use some Bob Jones curriculum. And these companies, I'm going to go here for a second, Ann. Those giant companies, they want to give you they all want to give you value. And it's almost like it's more than you could ever use. So when we get even the Bob Jones online curriculum, there's videos and there's quizzes and there's the textbook and then there's the study guide with the textbook and then there's practice tests and there's labs and it's unbelievable how much is in one package deal for, I don't know, $300 or $600. You can still choose which parts of those to do. So, I don't think we've ever purchased an online curriculum and done every single part of it. There's some classes where, economics, right? I think I let one of my kids read the book. I mean, if I look back to my high schooling, I don't think I ever read an entire textbook, every single word. It was, I'm going to go find the bold words, find the definition, to fill in the quiz, to fill in the study guide, to try to study those to pass the test. I decided I was going to do it different with some of the history and social studies topics. They read the entire book in the context that the writer of that book, which Ann knows, they're very intentional about how they write, and it's a whole story. And so instead of teaching them cherry picking, I let them read the whole textbook. And when I say, okay, here's your textbook for the year for economics. There's 340 pages. You have about 180 days of school. Do the math. You have to read 3.5 pages of this book every day. And that doesn't take very long. And then it's so fun. I can tell they're learning because they just talk about economics. We'll be at the store. That's a loss leader, or that's a this, or, so you can tell that they're learning.
I was going to ask, Amy mentioned it. Rachel, do you homeschool year round or just during certain parts of the year?
Yeah, we do year round. I think that the summer break is just public institution. The teachers need a break. The kids need some time with the parents. And so it's really hard to like reteach your kids. So I don't think we've ever had a summer break just because not only can you get ahead, if you are on schedule and you don't take a lot of days off, um, if you can't do that, at least you're staying on track, but your kids will be they'll benefit so much more from continual learning. You have like a whole week or 2 of review every year if you do summer, and it's like, what's the point in that, Keep the mind fresh and sharp.
So
And we also do like 6 days a week usually. So they have 5 days. Homeschooling Torah is like based on the 5 days, and they'll do that solo work. But if we're behind on like science and social studies, that would be the day that we do our science or our social studies, so
very cool. All right, Kirsten, give us another question.
getting them using the
you're
work.
good.
Sorry.
You're good. Oh, she's saying, what history curriculum do you use? Go ahead. Who wants to go first?
We've done a lot of the Bob Jones, but it's not the best. But it's what we do because of circumstances. So, but we do fine. But then we talk about history, kind of like the Bible, like when we're walking and talking, and we watch documentaries and history. Like you adjunct it like crazy. So go ahead, Rachel.
Sure.
I use Homeschooling Torah, so that's where I found that stuff out about what son you're from. I think actually I've seen quite a few people ask. I should have clarified on that. It basically in the history curriculum, they'll break down where each son had dispersed to. So you have like the Africa and like the Polynesian islands and whatnot was Ham. Shem is mainly like Israel and the Arabian, nations. And then Japheth is like all European. And so Andrew and I are 100% European. So I can't say definitively that I don't have any of Shem or Ham in me, but the vast majority of me is definitely him, and I both are Japheth, the son of Japheth.
And Craig and I are working on a future thing for history, which I'm going to say this, but I have no idea when this is going to actually get out. So don't anyone ask. But we have a future piece of curriculum coming for history that's going to break down even where the 12 tribes dispersed after they were taken out of the land, and just to learn those histories of those people groups and where they went and kind of follow them. So that's so fun. Okay, Kirsten, give us another question. Maybe I should have asked her if there is another question. She is getting there. Let's see. Make sure she has one. I'm sorry to put her on the spot like that. Okay. She says she's not seeing any other questions. So if I'm missing one, I apologize to everybody, but it looks like those were the main ones. A lot of people were asking about, how did you find out you were from Japheth? So that's really cool. This was fun. This was really fun, you guys. Thank you so much for sharing. I asked some questions that put you on the spot, and I really appreciate that you were willing to let me do that to you. And I know that's hard, but I just want everyone to understand that you are really real people, and that your children are awesome, and that they can have the hope that when their children get older, and that they can become like friends with their own children. I know I have watched Rachel's children with her, and they respect her, but they love being with her. And Amy, absolutely, her children feel that way. They think so much about her, and I want that for everyone here too. So real quick, I see one more question, and then I will wrap up with announcements. Sarah is asking both of you, how do you avoid overwhelm? Do you ever get overwhelmed, either of you, with homeschooling or just life? How do you avoid that? We're going to talk about that, by the way, on
It goes with the question right before it, where she said, what do you do on a really, really busy day? Those two questions are the same question. You don't be too busy, which is not easy to say. If our life got such that volunteering at the food bank made homeschooling difficult, the food bank has to go. So, because maybe that's something that I do in a season later when my kids are grown. I wish that I had learned early on to make homeschooling the first thing we do when we don't do other stuff until the homeschooling is done. I don't even make dentist appointments now in the mornings. The mornings are just homeschooling, and it took me a lot of years to figure that out. Teach your kids that this is their job. Daddy goes to his job, and he doesn't leave jobs to go to like whatever else. He has to be at his job. This is your job. And then you get Sabbaths off. So I don't do a lot. Like, we're home all the time. There's a lot of things that we could do, but we just don't. We don't even go to homeschool co-ops. I can't fit that in. It's good, but it's not Guenther good. So try not to be too busy, sisters. Learn to say no. It's very hard, but sometimes you're a better mama if you say no to other opportunities. Rachel?
Yeah, so RV life has like really changed things up for us. Like I mean, it's inevitable. We can't not have move days. We have to move at least every 3 weeks or less. So move days and pre-move days are totally, I mean, they can do some of their copy work and things like that on a pre-move day, but a lot of times move day is kind of just move day. And when we get to the spot, sometimes they can do their schoolwork then, or we can do some schoolwork on the way. So I would just incorporate homeschooling like all throughout your day. If it's busy, then do some stuff in the car, or also implement that 6th day of working, and just catch up as it goes on, because I'm sure that some busy days will happen. It is inevitable, but you can work around that. You just have to be very diligent and when you do have spare time to make it work, like make it a part of your life.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to both of you. I am going to wrap up real quick by letting you all know I was supposed to do this in the first session this morning and completely forgot, but we have sponsors for each of our sessions. And our sponsor for this session is Sketching Through Scripture. And I'm going to put a link to that in the chat so you can go visit them on Etsy. And they are such a good match for Homeschooling Torah families, because as you're reading from the Bible, reading from history, reading from science, they have coloring, and this coloring matches scripture, and it's beautiful. I love it's just a sketch, and the mom that did them is probably going to say, well, I just sketched it because I like art. But for those of us that can't draw, believe me, I think they are wonderful, and I love the detail that she has put in. For instance, there's one where they are on the ark, Noah and his family, and she has put so much detail into those sketches. You need to go check those out. And also make sure that you go and check out the goodie bag. I'm going to mention that again because there is a giveaway for each of you from Sketching Through Scripture, so that you can have that and be able to try it out and use it with your family, but then go support this homeschooling mom who's a Torah mom as well. And I just want to really give a shout out to Sketching Through Scripture. Okay, everybody, we will be back here at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I had someone ask, what is that Pacific time? And that is 4 p.m. Well, no, 5, 6, 7. 4 p.m. Eastern. Oh, guys, I think it's 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. All right, I'm just going to stay on Eastern time. I've never been very good at that. But 7 p.m. Eastern time, and we're going to be talking about parenting, and it's going to be full of scripture. So bring your Bibles and your pens and your notebooks tonight so that you can take notes. In the meantime, go get supper figured out and give me 2 hours to get an email to you with all the resources mentioned in this video this afternoon. So thank you again for coming, everyone, and we will see you all this evening. Shalom.